Today, we're gonna talk about Yorha.
Glory to mankind! Glory to mankind!
Glory to mankind. Now, if you're familiar with Yorha at all, it's probably as the android military organization from the modern classic video game NieR Automata. Probably one of my favorite video games of all time, as well as a seasonal anime that's airing as I'm recording this. Also, I recognize that the one time you hear the title said in the game, they say Automata, but I've never heard the word automaton pronounced as automaton, so we're going with automata. Within the text itself, Yorha is a military organization, fighting a proxy war on behalf of humanity. After the Earth was invaded by aliens, it is said that the humans fled to the moon and have sent androids to fight on their behalf against the machine lifeforms built by the aliens. Yorha is just the most recent iteration of this android army, and they are fighting the machine lifeforms all the while praising the humans who they hope to someday bring back to Earth. Now, in this video, I'm planning to touch on the video game and even the anime a little bit, but that's not really what we're here to focus on today. No, the focus of this video is going to be Yorha, the stage play by game creator Yoko Taro and writer Asakusa Kaoru. Now, this is a full-on stage play, complete with dance and even a couple musical numbers. Now, if you're not familiar with Japanese stage play culture, this may seem really wild to you, but believe it or not, it really isn't. Your favorite anime or video game probably has a stage play associated with it, be it punch festivals like Naruto, Saint Seiya, or even Bleach. And yes, I do own a physical copy of the CD for the Bleach musical. Thank you for asking. And some of these stage shows have even left indelible marks on the industry. For example, the classic shoujo series Rose of Versailles and its stage play adaptations have become a foundational part of Takarazuka theater. And even Sailor Moon has a long-running series of musicals which are not only fun, but it's also the only time, while unscripted, that Haruka and Michiru have ever kissed each other in official media. So yeah, these stage shows and musicals, it's a thriving subculture. There's nothing too shocking about the fact that there's one tied into NieR, but obviously it caught my attention somewhere. No, my love of this subculture wasn't enough, nor was my deep abiding love for theater in general. It was something else that really drew me into this rabbit hole. While looking at the earliest version of this play, one that was done on an incredibly tight budget, I couldn't help but notice something odd about the release date. I mean, when was this show produced? 2014? Why does that feel so wrong? Let me check. Oh. Oh. So, crap damn, I found another interesting rabbit hole. I wish I was able to tell you that this was something that I already knew a ton about. That my encyclopedic memory just had this interesting thing and I'm unleashing it on you, perfectly timed for soaking up that good anime SEO. But that would be a lie. No, I'm relatively new to this particular fandom. And to give you a little bit more background, I kind of want to pass it over to the pods.
This started in a normal place.
It started with
Oh, Rena's playing this game about sad robots, comes to me, cries, and says, I would do it all over again. I don't know what she's talking about. Says, yes, hit continue, continue, continue. All right, let's go from there. And then you go and play the robot game with the sad lady that hits continue all the time. And now you want to cosplay A2.
Wow, that was the worst way of possible describing that. So this started in a normal place, though, theoretically. This wasn't insane initially. Playthrough of NieR Automata, great game, one of the best games of the year that it came out. I really A2 comes along is a character who I love, like right up there with Big Boss and Proto Man for like video game characters that I just adore and vibe with and want to do more stuff like related to them. But not like Big Boss and a lot like Proto Man. I would love to cosplay A2. There's a problem. A2's costume, her default is kind of boring.
Shredded?
Yeah, and I don't know that it would be that flattering on a T girl like myself.
I think you look cute.
Thank you for
I'm
that.
biased.
So I start looking for other A2 costumes, and somewhere along the lines, also while looking up other information about A2 and finding out her connection to Kaine, I find out about a stage play. As they implied, my easily obsessed mind wouldn't let me leave this alone. I had to find out more when I first stumbled upon this stage play, which was while I was looking for information on my two favorite NieR characters, Kaine from NieR Replicant and A2 from NieR Automata. It was while reading about them that I first found references to this stage show. Finding information on this play was not easy, like not even in the slightest. It doesn't help that official English sources are very limited. It's basically just some references that you can find in art books or interviews with Yoko Taro, usually mentioning the motivations of A2. Still, after all that digging, I was able to get a solid lead on what Yorha, the stage play, is about in the first place. So let's take a look at it. What is Yorha? Before we get started, I should probably acknowledge there are actually several Yorha stage plays. Not all of them have the same story. However, the first three productions, from between October of 2014 and February of 2018, do all share the same basic plot line, and that's what we're going to be focused on today. Those are referred to as Yorha versions 1.0, 1.1, and 1.2. 1.2 is probably the easiest one to find pictures and footage from. This is likely because it came out after the game, and thus the costumes and props, along with some of the cast, are a bit more video game accurate. Meanwhile, there are other productions that are all fantastic, but don't really tie into what I wanted to talk about today. So there's a gender-swapped version of this story, which is Yorha version 1.3, and then there's the also very popular Yorha Boys, and there was a gender-swapped version of Yorha Boys called Yorha Girls. But we're going to focus on these original three performances today. The story mainly follows one of the first groups of Yorha androids, and their de facto leader, Number 2, who finds herself thrust into leadership during an unfair and cruel war against seemingly uncaring machines after her leader is killed in action. Now, fans of the NieR games might already be familiar with this story and know it as the Pearl Harbor Descent. The story is described both within text of NieR Automata itself, along with within a novel called Short Story Long, and even in a manga adaptation with the name Yorha Pearl Harbor Descent. But long before any of those were released, including, I cannot emphasize this enough, the game NieR Automata, here is the entire story, spoilers and all, laid out before this game had even been announced, let alone released. And please take note, this wasn't released as NieR Yorha or Drakengard Yorha or Dragon Dragoon Yorha. This was just released as Yorha, a weird, sad play about combat robots. It's almost too wild to believe until you take into account the madman behind this project. Now, it wasn't exactly a secret that Yoko Taro, along with all of his musical collaborators, were attached to this play. And while his games have never been huge hits, he has a very devoted cult following. The original NieR game itself is a spin-off of the Drakengard series, known in Japan as Dragon Dragoon. And at the time that this play was produced, NieR wasn't even the most recent game in the Dragon Dragoon series. That title, of course, goes to Dragon Dragoon 3. Still, that doesn't stop Yoko from putting in references to obscure PlayStation 3 and even one PlayStation 2 game that there's a good chance the audience might not have played. Still, it's also important to remember that Yoko Taro's following isn't something to be dismissed. His fans are extremely devoted. So, as amusing it is for me especially to imagine someone just going to a theater and wondering what kind of show they're going to go into and only to find this weird, sad show about doomed robots, as funny as that is to imagine, that is most likely not what the audience came in there for. Yoko Taro fans know who they are. They know what they signed up for. And there's a reason Yoko has such a devoted following. Yoko makes some really interesting games, but also to call him an eccentric seems like a disservice to the concept of eccentric people. There's a lot going on with this auteur game maker. For starters, while you absolutely know you are playing a Yoko Taro game, he doesn't really make a secret of it. He's not a person like a Hideo Kojima who's going to put his face into a game. In fact, he's not big on showing his face anywhere. When addressing the public, Yoko usually falls back on drawings, crude puppets, and most recently, for the last few years, the mask of Emil, one of the main characters from the first NieR game. The games that he puts his name on are similarly unusual. Not only do they deal with some pretty dark and heavy themes more often than not, but they also don't really have a set playstyle. The games can switch from hack and slash action RPG to rail shooter to bullet hell almost at random and with little to no warning. If I were to assign a genre to Yoko Taro's games, it would honestly be more easily just slotted into video game in general, because the man doesn't have a genre that he sticks to. All this to say that releasing a stage play spoiling an entire main character's backstory, along with some of the major twists from the game, over 2 years before it's released, is pretty par for the course. Honestly speaking, some of the most fun I had while researching this was finding old Drakengard fan sites speculating as to whether or not this stage play that Yoko Taro had taken a break from games to work on would be related to the long-rumored but still not announced NieR 2.
The game takes place on a devastated planet Earth, and will show the intense battle between android Yorha unit. Interestingly, Yorha also happens to be the name of Taro Yoko's stage play, and the game will be related in some ways.
And this speculation wasn't based on necessarily nothing. Back in 2012, Yoko had founded an idol group, also titled Yorha, which, sure enough, had the same kind of aesthetic that would carry over to the play and eventually to the game. Writer Asakusa Kaoru and director Matsuda Ishidai also affirmed that a lot of the world was pretty clearly envisioned when they came on board, making it clear that pre-production was pretty well along, at least for the story elements, long before any of this got started. But I guess I've danced around this long enough. What's this play about? And what's the story? The play is set roughly 3 years before the events of the NieR Automata game. The brand new Yorha squadron is being deployed to break the stalemate in the 14th Machine War with the mysterious machine lifeforms. But during their descent, of the 16 units that are deployed, only 4 of the androids survive. The hot-headed sniper, number 16, the cool and extremely logical hacker, number 21, the defiantly cheerful number 4, and their de facto leader, number 2. Despite the heavy casualties of their descent, the android girls are still ordered to carry out the mission, come hell or high water. They've been tasked with destroying the machine's South Pacific server, located within Mount Kaala. But the androids are overwhelmed. They're out of hope and running out of options, but just when it seems like all hope is lost, they run into the Resistance, a group of androids that had previously been deployed to Earth more than 200 years before. They had fallen out of contact with Command, and it's pretty unclear if Command even knew they were alive. But after an extremely rocky start, Number 2 convinces the Resistance androids, led by an android named Rose, to join them toward a common goal. And so they opt to combine their resources to take out the server at Mount Kaala. Now, while the play has some pretty impressive choreography, both sword work and dance work, the bulk of the show is actually the two groups of androids having some pretty deep philosophical discussions of what their situation even means. And it's through these discussions and actions of care that the two groups of android women find common ground. Number 16, for example, starts a fistfight and then rivalry and eventually true friendship with a fellow hothead android named Dahlia. Lily, the seeming little sister of Rose's brigade, is initially extremely distrustful of the Yorha women, until she is infected with a logic virus, and it's Yorha number 21 that steps up to cure her. This doesn't just establish common ground between the two groups of androids, this helps number 21 join that sisterhood as far as Lily is concerned. This newfound trust also allows the androids to discuss the humans that created them with an almost religious awe, questioning what their existence means in relation to those humans and how close they ever could be to their creators, and why those creators left them with such a heavy burden. But there is no character in the play with a heavier burden, spiritual, logistical, or otherwise, than our protagonist, number 2. Number 2 is almost the textbook definition of a reluctant protagonist. She's lived her entire life being told that she's almost painfully average, and as a result, she's never sought leadership. But the death of number one means that not just the mission, but the fates of all of her comrades, old and new, are now placed as a burden precariously on her mechanical shoulders. And the thing about number two is that she's not afraid of failure. She can't be because she already feels that she's in the midst of it. There's a point while talking to the leadership of the resistance where Rose actually offers number two to have a human name like the rest of them, and number two declines. And it's not just because of her deep reverence for the humans that she's never seen, but rather because she literally doesn't think she's done anything of merit that would warrant her being worthy of such a luxury. The only real comfort number two finds in this world are memories of her late mentor, another android named Seed, and her friendship with number four, who at least manages to put on a strong face, even in the midst of this seemingly hopeless situation. It's really the way that these androids deal with the situation that they've been thrown into that is the meat of this production and makes it so worth exploring. See, all of the androids have been given memories, mostly copied from actual existing humans to give them a more human-like experience, because that's what they respect and want to replicate. For number four, this means memories of being a typical schoolgirl in a sailor suit. For number two, it's memories of living alone on a farm with her grandmother. But for androids like Lily, it's petrifying fear. Lily's night terrors and the things that she dreams about from her memories are so deeply disturbing that she can't help but feel that she might secretly be one of the humans that they've been trying to save. While this is dismissed by her android-found family, it doesn't change that it further highlights the religious fervor that the androids hold humans in. For Lily, she's not an android that dreams of electric sheep. She is an android who dreams of organic gods. Unfortunately for the androids, though, this bonding can't last forever, and they have to proceed on the mission. And one knows what they say about the best laid plans. So this is the part where I go into full detail of the ending of the play. If you've already played through to the true ending of NieR Automata, the game, you already know the broad strokes. But if this is something that you want to seek out and don't want spoiled for you, you might want to skip to the timecode below. The Android Coalition launches their assault on Mount Kaala, but the machines are better prepared than they could have anticipated. So with each obstacle, the group is pared down to try to buy time for the remaining members to get closer and closer to the objective. And with each new obstacle, the loss has become more brutal. Eventually, the team is cut down to just number 2, number 4, Rose, and 3 of her androids. As they make their way to the final goal, though, the bodies will continue to pile up. Number 2 and company are finally confronted by 2 little girls dressed in red. They explain that they are programs, extremities of the machine's command system, and that they had already hacked into the android's command. In truth, they even know what the Yorha mission was. They were never supposed to survive. It's why Command had been so cavalier with their lives in the first place. They knew there was no way for them to fight and win and still come out alive. However, should even one of the Yorha androids make it to the server room alone, even to die, Her black box, the machine that contains all of her lived experiences and memories, is set to explode, destroying the machine's server. But the Red Girls already know about the plan. The machines have had time to prepare. Even if everything else went to plan, even if number 2 and number 4 blow up right now, it wouldn't deal a decisive blow to the machines. But it would give Yorha the combat data they need to produce another generation of better Yorha androids. Number 2 prepares herself for the end. But just before she can surrender to fate, number 4 stands one last time. He reaches to her friend and throws her to safety so that she can activate her own self-destruction. Even if it means her death, if she can save number 2, then number 4 feels that her life, her very existence, her sacrifice would be worth something.
Number 2, go! I can handle... No! Number 4!
When the smoke clears, the mission is, at least in theory, a success. But the losses are insanely high. Number 2 doesn't just lose all of her friends, the new ones that she made, and the Yorha team that she came down with. Perhaps deeper, she loses faith in Yorha itself, and her very reason for existing. She's distraught, but she did gain something. She gained a new reason to fight, to keep pushing forward, to make it so that number 4's sacrifice wasn't for nothing. And so the play closes with attacker number 2 standing defiantly at center stage, ready to continue and to never give up. The scales finally falling from her eyes. Casual players of the game could be forgiven for assuming that the main character of the play is 2B, who is, of course, the main character for the first third and other parts of the original NieR Automata video game. This is only further complicated by casting decisions. See, the later versions of the show, the version 1.2 that a lot of the footage that you'll find is from, uses the canon outfits and props that have been adopted by other parts of the franchise at this point, and that version stars Ishikawa Yui, who voices 2B in the game and anime. But it's not. This is the origin story for A2, the mid-boss turned 11th hour protagonist of the Automata video game. When you meet A2 in the game, she's angry, broken, and clearly deeply hurting. And this play gives a lot of insight into what she's going through and why she feels that way. Now, while the game gives hints and absolutely references the play in more than a couple of spots, it doesn't change the fact that when you're initially playing it, especially since the anime hadn't been released yet, you might not be aware that there is this tragic backstory for the character, and it makes that broken, hurting version of A2 who we meet in the game hit so much harder. To put this in perspective, if you haven't seen this stage show, you meet this character in the context of her stabbing a baby. Yes, the ending of the stage play is brutal and deeply sad, but it's not without hope. After all, like I said, A2 does stand in this defiantly at center stage by the end. She hasn't given up on things. And that little seed of hope finally gets to sprout when you play the game. Now, as I had previously mentioned, A2 isn't even a playable character until your third playthrough of the game. But even with the limited interaction that you get with her, for me personally anyway, I felt a certain kinship with her. She is angry, she lashes out, she's extremely violent, but she's not without compassion. We finally get to see her fully rediscover that part of herself, that compassionate, heroic side, when, of all things, she breaks down and needs help. One of her filters is broken during a boss fight, and she needs to go somewhere where she can get it replaced. And when that happens, A2, who at this point has been a total recluse in the game, is forced to interact with android civilization again. Now, despite the bloodbath at Mount Kaala, A2 wasn't the only survivor. The resistance is currently being led by Anemone, one of Rose's followers, the other survivor. And while it's implied that A2 is aware of this and that the resistance camp exists, she can't bring herself to go there. Maybe it's survivor's guilt. Maybe it's the belief that all the deaths on that day are still her fault, that she doesn't deserve compassion or friendship, let alone spending time with a fellow veteran. But when forced out of desperation to go seek help, A2 finally reconnects with Anemone. And to her shock, she isn't turned away. She's instead met with compassion, with understanding, with welcome, as if she's a member of an old family who she just hasn't run into in a long time. Despite everything that happened, despite the fact that it was such a traumatic time in both their lives, despite the fact that within the events of the play, Anemone and A2 do not get along very well, Anemone still opens up her arms and welcomes A2 as a friend, as a family member. And for the first time in the entire game, and with the context of the Yorha stage play, perhaps the first time since the loss of number 4, A2 lets herself feel things again. She lets her guard down among people and just lets herself live. Yes, A2 has lost so much, and some of it was because of the decision she made. But she also has to keep living and to move forward. And the fact that she finally is allowed to have camaraderie, to let herself feel like a living being again, to just let herself not constantly be in pain. Maybe that's years of internalized Catholic guilt talking to me. Maybe this is me projecting my own feelings onto her, but I find that part of the game to be so incredibly beautiful. And this stage play has only made me love that character arc more. It's worth noting that telling the story with a stage play is, of course, a bit of a novelty. And for a lot of English speakers, it's going to be foreign in more ways than it just being Japanese. There's so many ways to already for English speakers to take in this story. The text version within the game, the novel version that is the first couple chapters of NieR Automata, short story long. There's the manga, Yorha Pearl Harbor Descent Record, which even uses the designs from the 1.2 musical for the characters. And as I'm recording this, the NieR Automata anime is already diving way deeper into the stage play than I had expected, even revealing that we are absolutely in an alternate timeline from an alternate ending of the play, which... But these themes are still there. And honestly, I think writing this off, just because it's an unusual way to tell a video game adjacent story, is missing the forest through the trees. There are beautiful things about stage shows that you're not going to be able to get in a game. And yeah, some of it is just the joy of filling in the blanks with your imagination. Some of it is also the joy of seeing longtime Yoko Taro collaborator Emmy Evans on stage actually singing the music that she helped to create. And since we're already talking about talent anyway, as weird as it is that Ishikawa Yui is playing A2 instead of A2's voice actress, what a great performance she still brings to the character. And perhaps best of all, Tanaka Reina's absolutely infectious charisma that she brings to number 4. I didn't get to spend nearly enough time talking about how great I think she is, but she really is just so amazing and charismatic in this role. I wouldn't pick anyone else. She's just wonderful. I think the subculture of anime and video game based musicals sometimes feels defensive, and rightfully so. I think there's a fear that when people bring it up, they're going to do it in a way that makes fun of something that a lot of people love and a lot of people put tons of work into. And I understand that fear. I think there's a kind of low-key racist thing we still have a lot in the English-speaking anime community of, oh, Japan, and just kind of writing off things that we wouldn't necessarily associate with fandom. And I really think that's a shame, because the Yorha musical is really something beautiful. I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad that I was able to find it and to experience what I can of it. And I think if you can find a way of viewing it, you'd really love it too. Like, finding footage from this has been incredibly hard. There's some stuff that's out in the wild that people just have that are either official uploads or well-known uploads, and those are really cool. Every once in a while it'll pop up on streaming services in Japan like Nico Nico, but it is frustratingly hard to get a hold of. And while I know it's not going to be heard by people at Square or Yoko Taro, I want them to know that there are people that appreciate the amount of love and work that went into these plays and would love to see them more widely available. This has been some of the most intense, frustrating, and at the end of the day, fulfilling research I've done for a video in a very long time. And I really hope this connected with all of you. Because things can be rough, things can be ugly. You make mistakes, you see people who you love get hurt. But it's important to keep pushing forward. And when I think about the story of number 2, who becomes A2, one of the best characters in any video game I've ever played, it inspires me to keep going. And I really hope this speaks to you as well. The Dragon, Dragoon, Drakengard, NieR community have been an interesting source to dive into. Um, I can't thank enough the people who have kept the websites going, fan pages and that. Especially Fire Sanctuary, a website run by Rekka Alexiel, which I'll include a link to in the notes. I literally cannot emphasize how devoted to this fandom Rekka is. You should absolutely check out the website. There's some really cool pictures from a dress rehearsal that she got to go to that are so worth looking at. So check out that website. Do a little bit more digging. This is a really special thing, and I'm glad I'm getting to share even part of it with you today. When I look at NieR Automata, more than anything else, I see a game about having an assigned purpose, losing that purpose, and still finding meaning despite all of that. And when I look at how A2 deals with that, when I look at the tragic lows that she goes through and the blissful highs that she can eventually reach, and even the tragic endings, no matter which one we're looking at, that she gets, I'm still just so happy I got to experience this character. And I hope that you appreciate her even a little bit more after this. Thank you as always to everyone who supports the work that I do. Thank you to all of my patrons, especially the top patrons who you see scrolling up right now. And thank you everyone for watching, sharing my videos, and maybe even thinking about subscribing. I do this because it's things that I love, and I hope I get to share a little bit of that love with you today. As always, thank you for playing. And keep on spocking in the no longer rotating world. Thank you everyone for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this. It has been a ride getting this together. I was really hoping to get it out back in January, and life came at me really fast. I had some stuff I needed to repair in my house. Then my parents lost the place that they're living in, and we had to move them. That was really scary. I'm a licensed insurance agent now. That took a lot. So just the real world came at me without mercy, and it broke my heart because partly because obviously all that stuff is stressful, but also because I just really wanted to share this with you guys. And I really did have a lot of fun putting it together. There's probably about half an hour of footage that I had to cut that was me forgetting my lines and then having to take off the blindfold to check the script, because all of those black and white scenes, uh I didn't have time to make like a nice blindfold so that I could see through, so I could not see anything for that. That was just me literally being blindfolded, and so I really hope those parts work, because those are the biggest pain in the butt to film. Um, Again, take a look at the sources. I've listed everything I could. Thank you to everyone who helped make this come together. Definitely check out Fire Sanctuary Lexiel's website. Do not bother her for where you can find like a illegal upload of the movie or the play or whatever. She's working really hard. She's done a whole lot for the community, and it looks like a lot of what she does is pretty thankless, and that's kind of bullshit. So check out her pictures. They're amazing. It's really cool. But don't bother her. She seems like a pretty cool person. Just, you know, show some respect. Thank you again, everyone, for coming around to this and for watching this. It really means the world to me. Best wishes as always. So much love. Thanks, guys.